Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Kiss, Blood and Stardust. Not exactly a seminal moment in the history of Kiss or comic books. it's, it's not terrible, but we're going to talk more about that in a minute. All right, let's get started on this. So we got writer Brian Hill, artist Rodney Buscemi, colors Adriano Augusto, letters Troy Peteri. There are 4 different colors on the covers on this, and we're not going to get into all the people who were involved. So, the first 2 issues, we got to do a really quick recap. It's kind of crucial to this review. The first 2 issues, in my opinion, should have been 1 issue. I think I already mentioned that in the previous review. And in this issue, it wasn't a continuation so much as they find the girl who's supposed to be the chosen one in some way, shape, or form, like the torch bearer. They're supposed to pass the torch on to her. And what happens? She, I don't know. She just doesn't come across as anything special. Maybe later on she will, but for now, she really just feels like that big fish in a small town, or excuse me, big fish in a small lake, and now she's in a much bigger ocean, and it's like, oh my, she's nothing special. I imagine that's going to completely change in the next issue or the issue after that. I think this goes up to 5 issues. I can't remember. Either way, right now there's absolutely nothing special about her. While all we really got was Gene Simmons, and that's the demon, and Lilith speaking in the previous 2 issues. Like, I don't even remember. Like, maybe what the hell's his name? The Star Child. Well, I'm having a total crap moment right now. Paul Stanley. While I think Paul Stanley may have said 1 thing in the previous issue or 2, I can't remember. He might not have. I'm pretty positive that the other 2, that freaking Ace Frehley and Pete Criss, didn't say anything in the previous 2 issues. And in this issue right here, they may have gotten in 2 sentences each. And in one case, they were to each other. Go figure. They might as well not have even been in this comic book. They didn't use their powers, really. Pete Criss looked cool at one point because he jumped up and did his Catman thing. It's like, come on, man. Like, that's all you got? Gene Simmons not only breathes fire, which we expect him to see, and flies, which we expect him to see, but he also casts a fire axe, which is, okay, perfect. I mean, his bass guitar was, one of his bass guitars was always in the form of an axe, which was freaking amazing. If they didn't charge, what is it, 15 to 20, I think it was $22,000 for a signed bass where they'll play it once on stage. Like, he will play that guitar, and Paul Stanley do the same thing. I will take a guitar, I will play it once, for 1 song on stage, live, and you will take all the pictures you want of that, and then I will take a picture with you, giving you the guitar, and you can take all that money and go and sell the guitar and do whatever you want, or the bass in Gene Simmons' case. Like, just, oh my God, such money-grubbing, elitist. Like, the Kiss Army is supposed to be all about rebellion, and in reality, it's about, let's, resell. They've got more best of albums than they've got regular albums, for crying out loud. And then on top of that, they only cater to the rich, man. They'll sit there and be like, here's a VIP pass, and they'll make sure they put on there, tickets to the actual show are not included. So you gotta buy tickets to the show to begin with, and then get your backstage passes on top of that. Like, come on, man. One package should serve everything instead of just screwing you over. It's like, oh, the show's going on, but I'm waiting around back because I got, the backstage passes, but I didn't buy tickets to the show. Oops. Like, just, oh my God. So, yeah, I think a lot of this is coming from me just loving the music, but hating everything behind the scenes. Legit, every single thing behind the scenes. Love him or hate him with Gene Simmons. And I this is my favorite Gene Simmons interview, if you could even call it that. Go and check out Eddie Trunk. He did an interview with a bunch of different bands. I think Accept was one of the bands. I haven't listened to this thing in a while. I think it was like a year. I think when it first came out, I listened to this on the radio. But you can go on YouTube and you can actually find Eddie Trunk And if you don't listen to Eddie Trunk and you're a music fan, then I question if you're really a music fan. No disrespect. Maybe some way, shape, or form you haven't heard of the guy before. But anyway, go and listen to that interview with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. Oh my God, it is great. Gene Simmons he's playing Duck Duck Goose, roasting everybody in the room, and it's freaking amazing. Like he's very self-aware. Still sick. Anyway, as far as this issue is concerned, I almost feel like it was contractually obligational that he had to make Gene Simmons the most badass man in the world, which is odd because I know that Gene and Paul work very closely together. They both own the rights to Kiss, from the best of my understanding, equally. You know what I'm saying? They've both always worked very well with each other. They treated Peter Criss like he was a pile of garbage, which is disgusting. And then after Ace didn't want to put up with, after Ace, showed that he actually had a conscience and felt bad for Criss, he wound up leaving, and the band just wound up screwing him over also. So the two of the four founding members of the band, they're just treated like absolute trash. You know what I'm saying? And like, okay, well, you can come on in, but, we're going to charge you this and that and that. So they're founders fees, and it's ridiculous. They're in many regards, they're disgusting human beings who portray the worst in capitalism to me. Anyway, the music's still awesome. And I don't know, for me, seeing Gene Simmons, I guess it's, it is undeniably expected that Gene Simmons is going to be the head of this because everybody wants to see the Demon. He had the coolest makeup. He had the greatest gimmick. He had this, that, and the other thing. He was the one that everybody was like, yeah, when Kiss first appeared, he was the one who came out to talk to everybody in full makeup, of course, the kabuki makeup. And he dealt with all the criticism and whatnot. And I don't know, I could really get into it a lot. But, I get it. He's the one who puts the most into it. At the same time, he's just not the kind of human being you would ever want to call friend from what you see on stage, from what you see, like on his show, Family Jewels. I've watched an episode or two. I don't think I've ever watched an episode all the way through, but not. And then the things that you hear behind the scenes and everything, just from the people who know him, who are acquaintance with him, who've worked with him, not a good person at all. Not a good human being. Not an example. When the aliens come and start dissecting us, he's not the one that we want to find first, because they'll just be like, oh yeah, the human race is selfish and repugnant, so it's not a big deal if we experiment on them and all that stuff. And I'm only partially kidding about the aliens coming. So anyway, so make no mistake, that was a huge damper on what I'm getting from this comic book, man. It really is. So seeing Gene be not just the focus of the it's one thing to be the focus of the comic book. You can count the number of lines that these other people had in the comic book. And that's usually one of the biggest problems with these comic books is, the Kiss comic books, is that everybody who makes one, when they're licensed out, hey, I'd really like you to write this. It's cute trying to keep Kiss in the public eye the way that they do, and making sure that they buy the gold records every single time to ensure that, besides the Elder, making sure that they're always considered the best selling and, whatever. Just, it's a bit much. So by the end of this comic book, when you see that they kind of do their Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Voltron-esque thing, seeing that it's really just Gene Simmons buffed up more, like that, it's a digital comic book. If I had the physical copy, I'd have put the book down. Like, you ever read something just like, oh, this is just bullshit. You gotta put it down and put your hands up like, I can't touch the comic book anymore. Oh man, I almost felt like I had to bleach my eyes after this. Like, nah, just a thimbleful and I'm good. I feel better now. Like, oh, it's just way too much Gene, man. And like, just make no mistake, I would not have even reviewed this comic book if I would have, if this wasn't, if this didn't come out at this particular time. There's not a lot of comic books coming out You know what I'm saying? Like, I reviewed the first 2 issues. I probably should have just stayed at the first issue alone because I know how these Kiss comics always come out, man. I don't care if freaking Stan Lee and Jack Kirby got on this comic book and decided to make a Kiss comic book way back in the day. It would not have been any good. It just wouldn't have been. No Kiss comic book, in my opinion, is really any good. Go back to, you know what I've talked about in the previous issues, you know, them mixing their blood into it and whatnot, into the ink. Yeah, it's cute. All of it. It's cute. But I'm just not a huge particular fan of the Kiss comic books in that regard. And that's just the way it is. I never really liked the Alice Cooper comic books. I just don't feel like, I don't know how this is. People who write amazing comic books, including Brian Hill, people who write amazing comic books can never just seem to get these comic books right. And there's got to be a reason for it. There simply has to be. Like, I don't know how I would make a Kiss comic book good. I could think of how, you know, we all in our head canon, I would write the best, you know, comic book ever. Yeah, until you actually do, and it sucks. And one day I expect that's going to happen with me also. I'm going to write a comic book I'm going to think is awesome. It's going to suck. People are like, this comic book sucks. Maybe. In the meantime, like, I can't, I can only imagine that there are so many stipulations when it comes to writing a comic book for Kiss, for Gene Simmons specifically. It's like you got to go through this checklist of, okay, got to make sure I include this, and this, and I can't include this and this. So how do you make a good comic book after that? I would just, again, this is only in my head. I'm only talking about this like what I can imagine writing a Kiss comic book would be. There are so many limitations and so many objectives that you have to hit each time, like you're connecting the dots, that every one of these Kiss comic books will feel like you are connecting the dots, playing connect the dots, and you know how that works. You can look, anybody, I think for the most part, me, I myself, I can look at a connect the dots thing, like since I was a kid, and I don't have to connect the dots. I can see the pattern, and I can say, oh, this is what it's going to be. And I think that's what it's like for everybody. I think that's why connect the dot books don't really sell so well, because, you know what I'm saying? You know what the comic book is going to be at the end of the day. And I can only imagine that they're all so similar because there are so many rules as to how you make the comic book. And nobody's allowed to just freeform, you know? Is what it is, man. I'd make Ace Frehley like the man in a comic book myself. You know what I'm saying? If I had to write all 4 of these characters, I would do a whole lot more with the Star Child. The demon would be the backdrop. You know, him and Pete Criss would probably be the backdrop. I'd have to do something extra special with Pete Criss in order to get him in there and, you know, like, okay, he's more than just some guy who goes meow and scratches people. I would do so much more. But I think that my hands would be tied. And writing a comic book like this, you know, bound and gagged and hogtied, probably not a good fit. And I imagine it's all going to look like connect the dots. Anyway, pretty long for a Kiss comic book, right? Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.